The forceps caught the light as Dr. Jennifer Hayes lifted them from Robert Mitchell's ear canal. Something dark writhed between the metal tips, brown, glistening, legs clawing at empty air, still alive. "Oh my God," Nurse Janet whispered. Rob stared at the thing that had been living inside him, his breath coming in short gasps. An American cockroach. 2 centimeters of nightmare, its antenna twitching, compound eyes catching the fluorescent glare of the examination room. 3 weeks. It had been there for 3 weeks. "Mr. Mitchell," Dr. Hayes said carefully, not taking her eyes off the specimen as she transferred it to a clear container. "We need to check for something else." Rob's throat tightened. What else could there possibly be? But he already knew from her expression. This horror wasn't over. It had started so simply, just an itch on a Monday morning. Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments, along with the city you're watching from. Now, let's continue with the story. Robert James Mitchell had never been the complaining type. At 43, the civil engineer carried himself with the quiet steadiness of a man who'd learned early that life rewarded those who kept their heads down and pushed through. His brown hair, streaked with gray at the temples, and the soft middle that had crept up in recent years, told the story of a man more concerned with blueprints than gym memberships. The Austin heat hit like a furnace that August morning as Rob supervised the concrete pour on the 4th floor of the new downtown office building. His crew of 12 moved with practiced efficiency, the rumble of the cement truck's backup beeper a constant soundtrack. At 47 past 6, Rob adjusted his hard hat and felt it, a slight tickle deep inside his right ear. Nothing really, just an itch. He scratched it absently with his pinky and returned his attention to the rebar inspection sheet. Tommy Bradford, the site foreman and Rob's closest friend, approached with a clipboard. "Emma score any goals this weekend?" "2, Rob said, pride warming his voice. "That girl's got her old man's determination." "And her mother's common sense, thank God," Tommy laughed. He paused, watching Rob scratch his ear again. "You got something in there, buddy?" "Nah, just sweat and dust. Hazard of the job." Rob remembered Friday's dust storm when they'd cut through the concrete. Probably got some debris in there. He'd clean it out at home. The day stretched on, temperatures climbing past 100 degrees. The radio crackled with weather warnings and heat advisories, something about monitoring insect activity after last week's tropical storm. But Rob wasn't paying attention. His focus stayed locked on curing times and structural tolerances. By evening, the itch had become a persistent companion. In the shower, Rob tried cleaning his ear with his finger, felt something odd, not like earwax, more like something that moved when touched. He dismissed it as trapped water. His townhouse in East Austin felt emptier than usual. Emma was at her mother's this week, part of the custody arrangement that still stung 2 years after the divorce. Rob microwaved leftover spaghetti and ate alone at the kitchen table, the History Channel playing a World War II documentary he wasn't really watching. His grandfather had fought at D-Day, used to say, "The body is a temple." Rob's grandmother would add, "Don't borrow trouble." He scratched his ear 3 times during dinner without realizing it. That night, lying in bed with a Louis L'Amour Western, Rob tried cleaning his ear with a cotton swab. He pulled it out, examined the slightly discolored cotton, normal enough. But when he inserted it again, he felt something shift deeper inside, like movement. Impossible. "I'm imagining it," he muttered, turning off the light. But sleep didn't come easily. The itch was still there Tuesday morning, a constant background hum of irritation that Rob tried to ignore as he arrived at the construction site with his coffee. During the safety briefing, he caught himself scratching and pulled his hand away, embarrassed. Tommy noticed. "Still got that itch?" "It's nothing," Rob said, more defensively than he meant to. "Probably just need to flush my ears out." But by midday, the distraction had cost him. During a site inspection, he missed a crucial notation on the blueprint, caught only when Tommy double-checked behind him. "Rob, you okay? You seem off." "I'm fine. Just hot." That evening, Emma called on FaceTime, her 12-year-old face filling his phone screen. "Dad, you look tired." Rob forced a smile. "Just a long day, honey. Are you eating okay? Mom says you probably survive on frozen dinners." Her brown eyes, his eyes, studied him with concern that seemed too old for her age. "I had a salad today," he said, "with some salad in it." Emma giggled, but the worry didn't leave her face. "Love you, Dad." "Love you too, Em." After she hung up, Rob opened his laptop in bed and typed into Google, "Itchy ear won't go away." The results felt reassuring. Swimmer's ear, fungal infections, eczema, earwax buildup, all common, all treatable. He bookmarked a page about olive oil as a home remedy and felt better. Wednesday brought no relief. The itch had evolved into something harder to ignore, a constant presence that pulled at his attention like a crying child. During a 2 o'clock meeting with Mr. Peterson, the elderly client, Rob kept touching his ear. "You all right, son?" Mr. Peterson asked. "Yes, sir, just a minor ear issue." "Don't wait on those," the old man warned. "My brother lost hearing in one ear from waiting too long on an infection." Rob nodded, but didn't really listen. He'd handle it himself. At lunch, Tommy bit into his sandwich and said, "My cousin had a bug fly in his ear once." "Camping trip." Rob looked up. "Yeah? What happened?" "Had to go to the ER. Some kind of gnat. They flushed it out with water." Tommy shook his head. He said the worst part was feeling it move, like alive in there. Something cold moved through Rob's chest. He changed the subject quickly. Thursday evening, alone in his kitchen, Rob pulled out the olive oil bottle, extra virgin from Costco. Following the instructions he'd found online, he tilted his head and used a dropper to put 3 drops in his right ear. He lay on the couch, left ear down, letting the oil sit for 5 minutes while Jeopardy played on the television. The clock on the wall, analog, inherited from his grandmother, ticked steadily. 5 minutes felt like 50. When he finally sat up to let the oil drain, everything changed. The oil ran out onto a paper towel, and then something moved. Not the oil, something else. Something swimming, pushing deeper into his ear canal. Undeniable. Real. The olive oil bottle slipped from Rob's hand and shattered on the hardwood floor. His heart hammered against his ribs. Both hands flew to his ear. "Oh, God! Oh, God, no!" He ran to the bathroom, snapped on every light, grabbed a flashlight. In the mirror, he tried desperately to see inside his own ear. Impossible. Ridiculous. The pressure inside felt different now. Fuller. Like a presence. Rob gripped the bathroom sink, forced himself to breathe. "Calm down. You're panicking. It's just oil moving around. Fluid dynamics." He splashed cold water on his face. His reflection stared back, pale, eyes too wide, sweat beating his forehead. "There's nothing alive in there," he said to the mirror, but he knew what he'd felt. He knew it had moved away from the oil, not with it. Friday arrived with barely 2 hours of sleep behind him. Every time Rob had drifted off, he'd jerked awake, paranoid about lying on his right side. What if it went deeper? At the construction site, exhaustion caught up with him. He ordered the wrong gauge rebar, a mistake that would cost 2 days. Tommy exploded. "Rob, what the hell? This'll set us back." "I know. I'll fix it." "Hey, seriously, man, what's going on?" "Nothing. I'm handling it." Tommy's concern felt like accusation. Rob almost told him everything, opened his mouth with, "I think there might be something," then stopped himself. He'd sound crazy. He probably was crazy. "I'm just tired," Rob said instead. "Personal stuff. I'll get it together." Maybe it was stress. His father used to get weird symptoms when anxious, chest pains that turned out to be nothing. Maybe this was psychosomatic, in his head. Literally, but not literally. Saturday morning, Rob picked up Emma from Sarah's house. His ex-wife appeared at the door, her expression shifting from neutral to concerned in an instant. "Rob, you look terrible. Are you sick?" "Just a cold or something. I'm fine." Sarah's eyes narrowed. "If you're contagious, maybe Emma should—" "Mom, I want to go with Dad," Emma interrupted from behind her. Sarah relented, but shot Rob a warning look that said, "You better not make our daughter sick." In the truck, Emma studied him from the passenger seat. "Dad, what's wrong with your ear?" Rob hadn't realized his hand was there again. "What?" "Nothing." "You keep scratching it." "Does it hurt?" "Just a little itch, honey. No big deal." Emma went quiet for a moment, then said softly, "You always say that." "Say what?" "That everything's no big deal, even when it is." The words hit harder than they should have. Rob recognized the fear in her voice, the same fear that had colored her questions during the divorce. "Is Dad okay? Is this my fault? Why won't anyone tell me the truth?" Guilt settled over him like a wet blanket. Not only was he suffering, he was making his daughter worry. "I'll wait until Monday," he promised. "If it's not better, I'll see a doctor." At Emma's soccer game that afternoon, Rob tried to focus. Her team played the Westlake Raiders under a punishing sun. The itch had brought company now, a faint pressure, occasional sharp pangs that made him wince. When Emma scored a beautiful goal off an assist, turning and shooting in one fluid motion, she immediately looked to the stands for his reaction. Rob was scratching his ear. He'd missed it completely. Emma's face fell. "That was amazing, Em. Great shot," Rob called out, overcompensating. But the damage was done. Emma knew he hadn't been watching. That night, after Emma fell asleep in her room, Rob lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. The house was completely silent. He positioned himself on his left side, right ear facing up, and listened. At first, nothing. Then, so faint it could be imagination, a sound. Rhythmic. Deliberate. Scratch. 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 Coming from inside his head, Rob sat up, turned on the light. The sound stopped. Or had it ever been there? He lay back down, switched off the light. Silence. Then again, scratch, scratch, scratch. He repeated this 4 times before giving up on sleep entirely. Sunday morning, Rob made pancakes, their tradition. Emma shuffled into the kitchen in her pajamas, took one look at him, and said, "Dad, you look like a zombie." Rob attempted a joke. "Well, it is Sunday. Zombie's day of rest." Emma didn't laugh. "Maybe you should go to the doctor." "I will. Tomorrow. If it's not better." "You said that yesterday." "I mean it this time." But even as he said it, Rob knew he was lying. To Emma, to himself. That afternoon, while Emma watched a movie in the living room, Rob retreated to his bedroom with his laptop. His Google search spotted innocuously, scratching sound in ear at night, and returned results about tinnitus, TMJ disorder, muscle spasms, normal things. Then he saw it. Insects in ear canal, medical case studies. His finger hesitated over the trackpad. He didn't want to click. Clicking would make it real. But he clicked anyway. The case study from 2019 filled his screen. A man in Florida, a cockroach lodged in his ear canal for 2 weeks. Rob's hands began shaking as he read the symptoms: itching, sensation of movement, scratching sounds, discomfort, feeling of fullness. Every single one matched. There was a photo, a cockroach being extracted with forceps, its legs still moving. Rob barely made it to the bathroom before vomiting. He spent the next hour pacing his bedroom, laptop closed, trying to convince himself he was overreacting. The odds of that are... But he kept remembering. The tropical storm last week, the news reports about insect swarms, Mrs. Chen, next door, complaining about bugs getting into her house. "But I keep a clean house," he said aloud to his empty room. "This doesn't happen to people like me." The thought was absurd, and he knew it. Cockroaches didn't check credit scores or inspect housekeeping before choosing their victims. But the denial felt necessary, a thin barrier between him and complete panic. That evening, tucking Emma into bed, she grabbed his hand. "Dad, promise you'll go to the doctor tomorrow?" "I promise, sweetheart." "Pinky promise?" They linked their pinky fingers, a ritual from when she was small enough to believe in the magic of such things. "Pinky promise," Rob said. "Now get some sleep." "Love you, Dad." "Love you too, Emma. More than anything." After Emma's door clicked shut, Rob returned to his own room and lay down fully clothed on top of the covers. The scratching sound was constant now. No longer a question of if he was hearing it, but simply a fact of existence. Something was in there. Something alive. He was terrified of what it might be, but more terrified of confirming it. "One more day," he whispered to the darkness. "Just make it through one more day." But even as he said it, some part of him knew the truth. He wasn't going to make it through Monday without a crisis. The thing inside him, whatever it was, had been patient for 2 weeks. Its patience was running out. Rob stared at the ceiling fan's slow rotation, casting moving shadows across the room. Each shadow looked like legs. Each creak of the house sounded like chitin on bone. He didn't sleep at all that night. When dawn finally broke, washing his bedroom in gray light, Rob felt something he hadn't felt in decades: genuine, primal fear. Not fear of failure or judgment or loss, but fear of his own body, which had become a stranger to him. The temple his grandfather spoke of had been breached, and the invader was still inside. Monday morning arrived without mercy. Rob had promised Emma he'd call the doctor when the office opened at 8. At 7:15, his phone rang. The construction site. Emergency. The concrete delivery had the wrong mix ratio, a mistake that could compromise the entire structure's integrity. "I'll be there in 20 minutes, Rob heard himself say. He'd go after handling this. It would only take an hour. It had to. The problem was worse than reported. Standing in the August heat, Rob negotiated with suppliers, argued with the concrete company, and placated Mr. Peterson, whose face had turned an alarming shade of red. 2-day setback, $15,000 in additional costs. The clock on the site office wall showed 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10:30. Rob's ear had progressed from discomfort to pain, sharp, intermittent jabs that made him wince mid-sentence. When he finally returned to his truck at 12:15 to call the doctor, his phone lit up with other demands. Emma's school needed lunch money. Sarah wanted to switch pickup days. Tommy needed signatures on the revised schedule. 1 o'clock arrived. His lunch break evaporated. He never called the doctor. At 4:30, Emma climbed into the passenger seat and asked the question Rob had been dreading. "Did you go to the doctor?" The guilt was immediate and crushing. "I had an emergency at work. I'll go tomorrow." Emma's face transformed, disappointment, worry, and something worse, resignation. "You broke your promise." "Em, you always do this. Work is always more important." The words were an echo of Sarah's voice from their last year of marriage. The accusation felt unfair and entirely accurate at the same time. Yes, work demanded his attention. Yes, the job paid for Emma's private school and soccer league and Sarah's child support. But Emma wasn't wrong. He had broken his promise. Again. They drove home in silence. Tuesday brought no redemption. Rob's symptoms worsened, the pain now constant, throbbing deep in the canal. Occasional sharp stabs felt like electrical shocks. His right ear felt full, hearing slightly muffled, as if underwater. The scratching sound had become audible even during the day whenever things got quiet. His work performance deteriorated in step with his health. He misread a survey marker, placing a foundation stake 3 feet off mark. Tommy caught the error before the concrete pour, but his anger was no longer professional. It was personal. "Rob, this is serious. This could have been a lawsuit." "I know. I'm sorry, okay? Sorry doesn't cut it." Tommy's face was flushed, a vein visible at his temple. "You need to go home." "I'm fine." "You're not fine. You look like hell, you're making dangerous mistakes, and you're gonna get hurt, or get someone else hurt." The argument that followed was brief and brutal. Tommy demanded to know what was really wrong. Rob insisted it was nothing, just an ear thing. Tommy, exasperated, told him to go to a doctor. Rob promised he would, when he had time. Tommy's response was sharp. "Make time, Rob, before something worse happens." Wednesday morning, Rob was inspecting the 4th floor framing when the world tilted. Sleep deprivation, dehydration, and constant pain combined into a dizzy spell that sent him stumbling toward the edge where no guardrail had been installed yet. Tommy's hand grabbed his arm, yanking him back. "Whoa! Rob!" Rob sat down hard on the concrete, hands shaking, heart hammering. Tommy crouched beside him, fear replacing anger in his eyes. "That's it. You're done. Go home. Now." Rob drove home at 10 in the morning, something he'd never done in 15 years of construction work. He sat in his truck in the driveway for 20 minutes, staring at nothing, processing the fact that he'd almost died. Over an itch. He pulled out his phone to call the doctor. At that exact moment, he felt distinct movement inside his ear. Undeniable. Aggressive. The phone slipped from his hand onto the floor mat. His vision tunneled. He couldn't breathe, couldn't think. A panic attack consumed him. Hyperventilation, chest pain, the overwhelming certainty that he was dying right there in his driveway. Eventually, his breathing slowed. His vision cleared. He picked up the phone with trembling hands. "Tomorrow," he whispered. "I'll call tomorrow." Just one more day. But Thursday changed everything. Rob woke to wetness on his pillow. When his fingers came away from his ear, they were red. Blood. Not much, but unmistakable. At 8:02, he called Austin Regional Medical Clinic. "I need to see a doctor. Today. It's my ear." The receptionist's voice was professionally sympathetic. "What seems to be the problem?" Rob hesitated. How to explain? "It's infected, I think, and bleeding. Our earliest opening is next Wednesday, August 23rd at 2 p.m. "Next week? I need to see someone today. I can put you on our cancellation list, but I can't guarantee anything." Rob closed his eyes. "Fine. Put me on the list." He went to work because what else could he do? His grandfather's voice echoed in his head. "Walk it off, boy. The body heals itself." But his grandfather had died at 68 from a stroke he'd ignored the symptoms of for 3 days. On the construction site, Jerry, a 58-year-old who'd worked construction since he was 16, studied Rob with concern. "You don't look right. You okay?" "Been better, Jerry. Been better. My daddy used to say, when the body talks, you better listen." Jerry clapped him on the shoulder and walked away. Rob didn't listen. Friday afternoon, picking up Emma for the weekend, he couldn't hide the blood-stained cotton ball in his ear. Emma's eyes went wide. "Dad! What happened?" "It's okay, just a little scratch." "A scratch? You're bleeding!" Her voice cracked with fear. "I have a doctor's appointment next Wednesday." "Next Wednesday?" Emma's face crumpled. "Dad, that's 5 days." "I'll be fine until then." Tears spilled down Emma's cheeks. "You always say you're fine. You're not fine." She reached for her phone. "I'm calling Mom." "Don't. Please. This is between us." "No. You need help." Rob's exhaustion and pain boiled over. "I said I'm handling it." Emma flinched, as if he'd struck her. Rob immediately regretted the words, the volume, the anger that wasn't really anger, but fear wearing a mask. "I'm sorry," he said softly. "I didn't mean to yell." Emma's voice was small. "I'm scared, Dad." "I know, sweetheart. Me too." They sat together on the couch, and for once, Rob told the truth. "You're right. I should have gone sooner. I thought I could handle it myself." "Why do you always do that?" Emma asked. "Try to do everything alone. You have people who want to help." "I know. I'm not very good at asking for help." Emma hugged him tightly. "Then I'm asking for you. Please, go to the hospital." Rob stroked her hair, feeling like the worst father in the world. "I will. If it's not better by Monday, I'll go to the ER. I promise." But he'd made too many promises lately. Saturday, Rob sent Emma to Sarah's house early, claiming work obligations. The truth was darker. He didn't want his daughter to see him falling apart. Alone in his house, he collapsed into bed, unwashed, unfed, and listened to the scratching sound that had become his constant companion. His laptop provided a gateway to horror. He Googled compulsively. Insect in ear symptoms. Cockroach in ear canal. Bug laying eggs in ear. Each search result was worse than the last. A woman in India. A cockroach lodged for 3 days, removed under anesthesia. A man in Australia. A spider. Rob watched the removal video and immediately wished he hadn't. A child in Texas. A cockroach that had laid eggs. Required surgery. Texas. It happened in Texas. It could happen to him. It was happening to him. Sunday morning arrived at 4 a.m. when Rob gave up pretending to sleep. His ear throbbed with relentless intensity. His hearing on the right side was diminished by 40 or 50%. A ringing sound layered over the scratching created a symphony of torment. "Tomorrow," he decided. "Monday morning, first thing. I'll go to the ER." He set his alarm for 6, planned his route to Austin Regional Medical Center, 8 minutes away, wrote a note for Tommy in case he couldn't call, texted Sarah asking if Emma could stay one more day. Sarah's response came quickly. "Is everything okay?" "Will be. Just need to handle something." Sunday evening, Rob performed his usual rituals. Coffee, though he barely drank it. Toast, though he couldn't taste it. He sat at the kitchen table as the sun rose, casting golden light through the window. Birds sang outside. A beautiful summer morning. Peaceful. The irony wasn't lost on him. Monday morning, August 23rd. Rob woke at 6 from a sleep that wasn't really sleep. He showered, dressed in clean clothes, made coffee out of habit, not desire. He'd leave for the hospital at 10. First, he'd send a quick email to Tommy about taking the day off. At 9:47, Rob sat at his kitchen table, laptop open, coffee mug in hand. He raised the mug to his lips, took a sip, and in that moment, that single, ordinary moment, his life shattered. Pain exploded through his head, not gradual, not building, instantaneous, blinding, absolute, like an ice pick driven from his ear straight into his brain. His body convulsed. The coffee mug flew across the room and shattered against the wall. The laptop crashed to the floor. Rob's chair tipped backward. He hit the kitchen tile hard, the impact driving the air from his lungs. His hand clamped over his ear, instinctive, useless. When he pulled it away, his palm was covered in blood. Not drops, not a trickle. Blood flowing freely, running down his neck, soaking into his collar. He screamed, but no one heard. His neighbors were at work. Through the agony, worse than the pain, Rob felt it. Movement inside his ear, vigorous, desperate, violent, like something thrashing, like something trying to escape or burrow deeper. Survival instinct took over. Rob crawled to the sink, hauled himself upright using the counter. His vision blurred. Pain, shock, blood loss. He grabbed a dish towel, pressed it to his ear. It soaked through in seconds. Hospital. He had to get to the hospital. Now. The drive to Austin Regional Medical Center was 8 minutes that felt like 8 hours. Rob ran 2 stop signs, didn't care. The blood-soaked towel stayed pressed to his ear. The pain was so intense he could barely stay conscious. He parked crookedly in the ER lot, stumbled through the automatic doors, and the last thing he registered was the triage nurse's face transforming from routine concern to alarm. "Sir, are you okay?" "My ear," Rob managed. "Something's in my ear." The triage nurse, Janet, according to her name badge, took one look at the blood-soaked towel and the wild panic in Rob's eyes and made a decision. No waiting room, no forms. She grabbed his arm and steered him directly through the double doors into the examination area. "You're bleeding quite a bit. Let's get you back immediately, in exam room 3. Janet worked with practiced efficiency. Blood pressure, 145/95. Pulse, 110. Temperature normal. Rob barely registered any of it. The pain had evolved beyond sharp or throbbing into something that consumed his entire existence. "Honey, what happened?" Janet asked, her voice gentle despite the urgency. Rob's words tumbled out incoherently. "I don't know. It's been itching for weeks, and today it bit me." "What bit you?" "I don't know. Something in my ear." Janet saw the raw terror in his face and squeezed his shoulder. "Okay, stay calm. We'll figure this out." She pressed the call button. "I need ENT to room 3. Emergency consult." 5 minutes felt like 5 years. Rob sat gripping the exam table, the paper crinkling beneath his trembling hands. His right ear felt like it was being devoured from the inside out. Movement continued. He wasn't imagining it, couldn't be imagining it. Something alive thrashing inside his head. The door opened and Dr. Jennifer Hayes stepped in. She was 38, blonde hair pulled into a neat ponytail, blue eyes that had seen a decade's worth of ear, nose, and throat emergencies. But the steady confidence in those eyes would soon be tested. "Mr. Mitchell, I'm Dr. Hayes. Tell me what's been happening." Rob tried to organize his thoughts through the fog of pain. "There's something in my ear. I can feel it moving." "How long has this been going on?" 3 weeks. Started as an itch. Got worse. Today it attacked me." Dr. Hayes nodded, her expression remaining neutral even as her mind raced through possibilities. She washed her hands, pulled on gloves, and picked up a handheld otoscope. "Let me take a look." She positioned herself beside Rob, tilted his head gently, and peered into his right ear canal. For 3 seconds, she remained perfectly still, then her hand stopped moving. Her jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Rob's heart hammered. "What? What do you see?" Dr. Hayes straightened, her professional mask firmly in place, but Rob caught the flicker of something in her eyes. Surprise, maybe shock. "I see something. It might be a foreign object." She set down the basic otoscope. "I need better equipment." "Hold on." The moment she left the room, Rob's composure cracked further. A foreign object. That clinical term could mean anything. A foreign object that moved. That bit. That had been living inside him for 3 weeks. Dr. Hayes returned within minutes, wheeling an equipment Rob didn't recognize, a digital video otoscope connected to a large monitor mounted on the wall. She positioned it carefully, her movements deliberate. "This will let us both see what we're dealing with." She inserted the thin scope into Rob's ear canal. The monitor flickered to life, displaying the interior of his ear in high-definition clarity. At first, Rob couldn't make sense of what he was seeing. Pink and red tissue, inflamed and angry-looking, some dried blood, and then something brown. Dr. Hayes zoomed in, adjusting the focus. The brown mass shifted, and Rob's stomach dropped. It wasn't a mass. It had shape, segments, and as the camera drew closer, he could see legs. "Oh, God," Rob whispered. Dr. Hayes pulled back slightly, her professional demeanor showing the first real cracks. She pressed the call button. "I need Dr. Chen to room 3. Immediately." Rob couldn't look away from the monitor. The thing in his ear, he could see it now, undeniably alive, moving sluggishly in the light from the scope. "What is it? What is that?" Dr. Hayes met his eyes, and for a moment her clinical distance fell away entirely. "Mr. Mitchell, please stay very still. It appears to be an insect. Adult stage. I need to call in assistance." The word insect landed like a physical blow. Rob had known, somewhere deep down, but hearing it confirmed made it real in a way that shattered his last defenses. Dr. Marcus Chen arrived within 3 minutes, a senior ENT specialist at 55, with salt and pepper hair and the calm that came from 3 decades of practice. He looked at the monitor, then at Dr. Hayes, then back at the screen. "How long?" he asked. "Patient reports 3 weeks, Dr. Hayes said. Dr. Chen's eyebrows rose fractionally, the only sign of surprise he allowed himself. He turned to Rob. "Mr. Mitchell, I'm Dr. Chen. I've done hundreds of foreign body extractions. We'll take care of this." Rob's voice came out hoarse. "Has it laid eggs?" The two doctors exchanged a glance that told Rob everything he needed to know before they said a word. "Let's remove the insect first," Dr. Chen said carefully. "Then we'll do a thorough inspection." Dr. Hayes left briefly and returned with Nurse Janet, who carried a tray of instruments that looked medieval in their precision. Specialized forceps, irrigation syringes, collection containers. The local anesthetic came in small dropper bottles. "I'm going to administer local anesthetic," Dr. Hayes explained. "You'll feel cold, then numbness." The lidocaine drops felt like ice water penetrating deep into his ear canal. Rob gripped the armrests and counted seconds, 5 minutes for the anesthetic to take full effect. 300 seconds. Each one lasted an eternity. At 10:52, Dr. Hayes picked up the specialized forceps, thin, delicate instruments designed for exactly this nightmare scenario. Dr. Chen stood ready with additional light. Nurse Janet positioned the collection container. "You'll feel pressure and pulling," Dr. Hayes said. "Try not to move." Rob nodded, not trusting his voice. The forceps entered his ear canal. On the monitor, Rob watched them advance toward the brown shape that had destroyed 3 weeks of his life. The cold metal touched tissue. He felt pressure building. Then Dr. Hayes closed the forceps. The insect reacted immediately. On screen, Rob watched its legs begin to scramble, trying to find purchase, trying to escape. The sensation transmitted directly through his skull. Frantic movement, alien and horrible. Dr. Hayes pulled gently but firmly. Slowly. The insect resisted, legs catching on the walls of the ear canal. Rob felt every second of it, the pull, the resistance, the terrible wrongness of something being extracted from inside his body. "Almost," Dr. Hayes murmured, her concentration absolute. 15 seconds that rewrote Rob's understanding of horror. The monitor showed the brown body emerging, legs flailing wildly. And then, finally, the forceps cleared his ear canal. Dr. Hayes lifted the instrument into the light. Between the metal tips, a cockroach writhed. American cockroach, Periplaneta americana, 2 centimeters of nightmare, dark brown, bordering on black. 6 legs clawed at empty air. Its antenna waved frantically, searching for the warm darkness it had been torn from. It was alive, still alive. "Oh my God," Nurse Janet breathed, and she'd worked in emergency medicine for 20 years. Rob couldn't breathe, couldn't think. That thing, that living, moving thing had been inside him, inside his body, for 3 weeks. Its legs had touched his eardrum. Its body had pressed against the canal where sound traveled to his brain. It had been there while he slept, while he ate, while he held Emma. Dr. Hayes quickly transferred it to a clear specimen container and sealed the lid. The cockroach immediately began exploring its new prison, legs tapping against the plastic, leaving tiny marks in the condensation. Rob's vision blurred. He realized distantly that he was crying. Dr. Chen placed a hand on his shoulder. "Mr. Mitchell, in 30 years I've seen maybe 5 cases like this." 5 cases in 30 years. Rob was one of 5. But Dr. Hayes's expression told him the nightmare wasn't over. She was already reaching for the otoscope again, and the look in her eyes made his blood run cold. "Mr. Mitchell," she said quietly, "I need to examine further. This is unusual." Unusual how? Rob managed. Dr. Hayes didn't answer. She was already inserting the scope, and Rob's eyes were drawn back to the monitor like a moth to flame. The ear canal appeared empty now, just inflamed tissue and traces of blood where the cockroach had been. But then, Dr. Hayes adjusted the angle and zoomed in. Small white specks dotted the canal wall, not just a few, dozens. Dr. Chen leaned in to look at the monitor, and Rob watched his expression shift from professional calm to something darker. "Oh no," Dr. Chen said quietly. Rob's throat closed. "What?" "What is it?" Dr. Hayes turned to face him, and he saw genuine concern break through her professional composure. "Mr. Mitchell, those white specks, they're eggs. The cockroach laid eggs in your ear canal." The world tilted. Rob gripped the armrests so hard his knuckles went white. Not just one cockroach, dozens of potential cockroaches, growing inside him, waiting to hatch. "How many?" His voice sounded distant, like someone else speaking. Dr. Hayes zoomed in on the monitor, counting under her breath. "At least 30 to 40 eggs visible." 40. Rob tried to process the number but couldn't. 40 separate lives, waiting to burst forth inside his head. His stomach heaved. Dr. Chen's voice cut through the fog. "Mr. Mitchell, we need to remove them immediately. If they hatch." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Cockroach nymphs are smaller than adults. They can migrate deeper into the ear canal, into the middle ear, potentially the inner ear. The risk of severe infection, hearing loss, even meningitis, it's significant." "When?" Rob forced out. "When will they hatch?" Dr. Hayes checked the monitor again, examining the eggs closely. "Based on their development stage, I estimate they're 10 to 12 days old." Rob's mind raced backward through the calendar. 10 to 12 days. That meant they'd been laid during the first week, when he'd used the olive oil, when he'd convinced himself nothing was wrong. "So they could hatch within a week," Dr. Hayes confirmed. "You came just in time." Just in time. The words should have brought relief, but Rob could only think about what just in time really meant. If he'd waited for that Wednesday appointment, 5 more days, 30 to 40 baby cockroaches would have emerged inside his ear canal, would have scattered deeper into his head, would have... He couldn't finish the thought, couldn't breathe through it. Dr. Chen's hand on his shoulder was steady. "Mr. Mitchell, we're going to remove them now. You're going to be fine." But Rob heard what the doctor wasn't saying. You almost weren't fine. You came within days of catastrophe. All because you waited, because you thought you could handle it alone. Because work mattered more than a doctor's appointment. Because asking for help felt like weakness. His grandfather's voice echoed mockingly. "Walk it off. The body heals itself." His father's voice, "Don't be weak. Suck it up." That mentality, that toxic, stubborn, masculine refusal to admit vulnerability had nearly killed him, or worse. Dr. Hayes prepared the irrigation equipment. "We'll use lavage, gentle flushing with sterile saline. It's the safest method to remove the eggs without rupturing them." She filled a large syringe with warm, sterile saline, attached a thin, flexible catheter. Rob watched her hands move with practiced efficiency, but all he could think about were those 40 white specks on the monitor. 40 potential nightmares. "This will feel strange," Dr. Hayes warned. like water in your ear after swimming, but deeper. She inserted the catheter carefully, and Rob felt the warm liquid begin to flow. The sensation was profoundly unsettling. Pressure building inside his skull, liquid moving where liquid shouldn't be. The saline began flowing back out, draining into a kidney-shaped basin that Nurse Janet held steady. Rob made himself look at the basin. The liquid was pink-tinged with blood, and floating in it, small white specks. Eggs. Each one a life that would have hatched inside him, would have eaten him from the inside. His whole body trembled. "You're doing great," Dr. Hayes said, but her attention stayed fixed on the monitor, tracking the irrigation's progress. "First round complete. Let's check." She examined the ear canal with the scope. More eggs remained, some lodged in tiny crevices in the inflamed tissue. She repeated the process. More saline, more pressure, more eggs flowing out into the basin like tiny pieces of his sanity. Some eggs clung stubbornly to the canal walls. Dr. Hayes switched to a microsuction device, a tiny vacuum that whined at a high pitch. Rob felt tugging sensations as eggs were pulled free from where they'd attached themselves to his flesh. The third pass required a small curette, a scraping tool that made Rob think of dentistry, that same awful sensation of something being removed from places it shouldn't be able to reach. The scraping sound transmitted through his skull, making his teeth ache. "Almost there," Dr. Hayes murmured, her concentration absolute. Finally, after what felt like hours but was only 30 minutes, she withdrew the instruments and did a final inspection with the scope. The ear canal appeared empty now, angry red, traumatized tissue, but clear of the invaders. "Let me verify," Dr. Chen said, taking his turn with the scope. He examined every millimeter of the canal, zooming in on suspicious shadows that turned out to be normal variations in tissue. After 5 minutes, he nodded. Clear. Nurse Janet had been counting the eggs in the basin, separating them from the bloody saline with a small strainer. 37, she announced quietly. 37, plus one adult cockroach. 38 separate cockroach lives that had found harbor in Rob's body. He stared at the number, trying to understand it. 37 futures prevented. 37 horrors avoided by days. If he'd waited until Wednesday, if he'd toughed it out one more week, if he'd listened to his grandfather's ghost instead of his daughter's pleas. The specimen container with the adult cockroach sat on the counter, and Rob couldn't stop looking at it. The insect had stopped its frantic movement and now sat motionless, as if exhausted from its ordeal. From its ordeal. The thought was absurd. This thing had invaded him, had colonized him, had turned his body into a nest. And yet, looking at it now, Rob felt something unexpected alongside the horror and revulsion. A strange, twisted recognition. The cockroach had just been trying to survive. It had found what seemed like a perfect environment, warm, moist, safe, and had done what biology programmed it to do. It hadn't been malicious. It had simply been alive. Rob was the one who'd failed to recognize the danger, failed to act when action was needed, failed to ask for help when help was available. Dr. Hayes was explaining the aftermath care. "You have minor abrasions in the canal, significant inflammation, but no perforation of the eardrum. Honestly, Mr. Mitchell, you're very fortunate." Fortunate. The word hung in the air like a sick joke. "I'm prescribing antibiotic eardrops, 4 drops 3 times daily for 7 days. Oral antibiotics to prevent systemic infection. Anti-inflammatory medication for the swelling, Follow-up appointment in 1 week. She paused, her blue eyes meeting his directly. No water in the ear. No swimming. Use earplugs when showering. Rob nodded mechanically, but he was barely processing the instructions. His mind was stuck on one word: fortunate. Dr. Chen pulled up a stool, sitting so he was at eye level with Rob. "Mr. Mitchell, what you experienced is rare, but not unprecedented. American cockroaches are attracted to warm, moist environments. Your ear canal mimics their natural habitat, dark, protected, with consistent temperature and humidity." "But how did it get in?" Rob's voice cracked. "I keep a clean house. I'm careful." "This has nothing to do with cleanliness," Dr. Hayes said firmly. "After tropical storms, insects seek shelter. Your home provided that. Most likely the cockroach entered while you were sleeping. You wouldn't have felt it. The initial entry is usually painless." Rob thought back 3 weeks. The storm. The news reports about insect swarms he'd ignored. Mrs. Chen's complaints he'd dismissed. He'd thought himself immune because he kept things tidy. Because bad things happened to other people, not to responsible civil engineers who paid their bills and showed up on time. Pride. That's what it had been. Pride and denial. "We see 3 to 5 cases per year in Texas," Dr. Chen continued. "Usually, patients come in within 24 to 48 hours. 3 weeks is—" He paused diplomatically. "Unusual." 3 weeks. Rob heard the unspoken question. "Why did you wait so long?" "I thought I could handle it," Rob said, and the words sounded pathetic even to his own ears. "I thought it would go away." "I had work, my daughter. I convinced myself it wasn't serious." Dr. Hayes's expression softened. "That's a common response. We're conditioned to minimize symptoms, especially as men. Push through. Don't complain. But sometimes—" She gestured to the monitor, showing his traumatized ear canal. "Sometimes our bodies need us to listen." Rob left a hospital at 12:30 with a plastic bag of medications and gauze bandaging his right ear. The August sun hit him like a physical force as he walked to his truck. Same sun that had been shining when he'd arrived in panic 2 hours ago. Same sun that had risen on what he'd thought would be an ordinary Monday morning. But Rob Mitchell was not the same man who'd entered that emergency room. He sat in his truck for 5 minutes, unable to turn the key. His hands wouldn't stop shaking. When he finally started the engine, every sound made him flinch. The AC blower sounded like wings. A piece of debris hitting the windshield made him jump so hard he nearly swerved into the next lane. By the time he pulled into his driveway at 1:15, sweat soaked through his shirt despite the air conditioning running full blast. His house looked different. Not home, not sanctuary, but the place where a cockroach had crawled into his ear while he slept, trusting and vulnerable. Every window was a potential breach. Every crack in the foundation an invitation. Every shadow could be hiding dozens more. Before going inside, Rob walked the perimeter of the townhouse, examining every corner, every gap, every imperfection in the structure. Small crack under the back door. Deteriorated weather stripping on a window. Gap where the utility line entered. He cataloged each one mentally, already planning repairs. Inside, the kitchen stopped him cold. Coffee stains still on the wall where his mug had shattered. Laptop still on the floor. Dried blood on the tiles. The physical evidence of this morning's crisis, frozen in time. Rob couldn't bring himself to clean it. Couldn't even look at it directly. He went straight to his bedroom and collapsed onto the bed, fully clothed. Sleep should have been impossible, but exhaustion from days of insomnia finally overcame everything else. He drifted off around 2 p.m. His last conscious thought, a prayer that nothing would crawl into his left ear while he was unconscious. He woke at 3:30 to his phone ringing. Tommy. "Rob! Jesus, man, where have you been? I've been calling all morning." Rob's voice came out rough. "Hospital. I'm okay. I'll explain later." "Hospital? What happened?" "Had to have a procedure. On my ear. I'm fine now. I need a few days." Tommy's concern was palpable even through the phone. "Take all the time you need, brother. Whatever you need. The site can wait." But Rob knew that wasn't entirely true. Mr. Peterson was already furious about delays. The project had deadlines, penalties for missing them. His absence had consequences that rippled outward. At 4 p.m. he called Sarah. "Rob? Where's Emma? You were supposed to pick her up an hour ago." Rob's stomach dropped. He'd completely forgotten. "I'm sorry. I had a medical emergency. Can she stay with you a few more days?" Sarah's tone shifted immediately from annoyed to alarmed. "Medical emergency? Rob, what's wrong?" "I'm okay. Can we talk about it when I pick her up? I need a couple days to recover." "Recover from what?" "Rob, you're scaring me." "Please, Sarah. I'll explain everything. I can't right now." There was a long pause. Then Sarah's voice softer. "Okay, she can stay. But you need to talk to her. She's worried about you." That evening, Rob attempted the first steps toward normal life. He forced himself to clean the kitchen, scrubbed the blood from the tiles, wiped the coffee stain from the wall, rescued his laptop from the floor. The physical activity helped, gave his hands something to do while his mind spun. But when he opened the refrigerator to find something for dinner, a small dark spot on the wall inside made him jump backward, heart racing. Just a stain, just food residue, not an insect. But his body didn't care about logic anymore. He couldn't eat in that kitchen. Ended up with a protein bar eaten standing in the bedroom, door closed, lights on. Night brought new terrors. Rob lay in bed at 10 p.m., exhausted but terrified to sleep. The white noise machine he'd ordered on Amazon that afternoon helped somewhat. Constant neutral sound that masked the small creaks and rustles of the house settling. But every time he closed his eyes, he felt phantom sensations in his left ear, tickles that probably weren't real, movements that were certainly imaginary, probably. Certainly. He wore earplugs in both ears, despite the doctor's instructions about keeping the right ear dry. The bandage was waterproof anyway. He needed the barrier, needed something between his vulnerable ear canals and the world. Sleep came in 15-minute increments, broken by sudden wakefulness, by checking his ears with his phone's flashlight, by the certainty that he felt something that wasn't there. Tuesday morning, Rob went to Home Depot. The store was bright and overwhelming after a night of broken sleep. He moved through the aisles mechanically, filling his cart. 12 rolls of mesh screening, 20 tubes of caulk, door sweeps for every exterior door, weather stripping, 6 cans of insect spray, 4 ultrasonic pest repellers. The cashier, a young woman, maybe 20, rang up his purchases with growing concern. "Planning a camping trip?" Rob forced something that might have been a smile. Something like that. His hands shook as he swiped his credit card. Then Walgreens, 20 pairs of silicone earplugs, a sleep mask, another white noise machine for backup, extra antibiotic ointment. Back home, Rob worked like a man possessed. Every crack sealed, every gap filled, every potential entry point eliminated. He worked through lunch without noticing, worked through the afternoon heat that turned his unair-conditioned garage into an oven, worked until his hands cramped and his right ear throbbed despite the painkillers. By 11 p.m., his townhouse was sealed like a fortress or a tomb. Wednesday morning, Rob knew he needed to see Emma. She'd been at Sarah's for 5 days now, and his daughter deserved an explanation. Deserved to know he was okay. Deserved better than the scared, absent father he'd been. He picked her up at 4 p.m. Emma ran to the truck and climbed in, her face a mixture of relief and worry. "Tad! What happened to your ear?" The gauze bandage was visible below his hair. Rob had forgotten how obvious it must look. "I had to have a procedure. I'm okay now." "What kind of procedure?" Rob drove in silence for a moment, trying to find the right words. "How did you tell your 12-year-old daughter about the nightmare that had been living inside you? How did you explain 3 weeks of denial and the horror of the extraction?" "Let's talk when we get home," he finally said. At the kitchen table, the clean kitchen, scrubbed of all evidence, Rob told Emma everything. He didn't spare details. She deserved the truth. About the itch, the denial, the olive oil that made it worse, the 3 weeks of suffering, the blood, the emergency room, the cockroach, the eggs. Emma's face drained of color as he spoke. Her hands gripped the edge of the table. When he finished, she was silent for a long moment. "A cockroach," she finally said. "For 3 weeks." Rob nodded, not trusting his voice. Emma stood up, walked around the table, and hugged him fiercely. "Oh my God, Dad!" Rob broke. 3 days of holding himself together shattered. He cried into his daughter's shoulder while she held him, this role reversal that felt wrong and necessary at the same time. "It's okay, Dad," Emma whispered, her own voice thick with tears. "It's out now. You're safe." "I'm so sorry, Em. I should have gone to the doctor sooner." "You're okay now. That's what matters." But they both knew he wasn't okay. The physical invasion had been removed, but something else had been planted in its place, a fear that burrowed just as deep. The days that followed blurred together in a haze of hypervigilance and exhaustion. Rob couldn't sleep more than 2 hours at a stretch. Every night, he lay awake listening to sounds that probably weren't there, feeling sensations that were certainly imaginary. The white noise machine ran constantly, earplugs in both ears. Lights on. He checked his ears compulsively with a flashlight before bed, despite knowing it was irrational, despite Emma's worried looks when she caught him doing it. Work remained impossible. Tommy called daily, his concern growing with each conversation. "Take all the time you need, brother," Tommy said on Thursday. "Your health comes first." But Rob heard the unspoken pressure. The project was falling behind. Mr. Peterson was threatening to pull funding. The crew needed direction. Rob's absence had consequences. "Just a few more days," Rob promised, knowing it was a lie. Every small, dark spot sent his heart racing. A crumb on the counter, a spot on the floor, shadows moving in his peripheral vision. His rational mind knew these weren't insects, but his body responded with pure panic regardless. Elevated heart rate, sweating, the overwhelming urge to flee. Emma noticed everything. On Friday evening, Rob dropped a pencil at the kitchen table and jumped 3 feet when it clattered to the floor. Emma set down her homework. "Dad, you need to talk to someone, like a therapist." Rob's defenses rose automatically. "I don't need therapy. I just need time." "Dad." Emma's voice was gentle but firm, older than 12. "You haven't slept. You're not eating. You jump at everything. This isn't just time." "I'm fine, Em." "Really?" Emma looked at him with an expression that broke his heart. She'd seen this before, during the divorce, when Rob had insisted everything was fine while his marriage collapsed around him, when fine meant pretending nothing was wrong until something shattered. "Dad," she said quietly, "you haven't been to work in a week. You sealed every window in the house. You check your ears 10 times a day. You're not fine." Rob opened his mouth to argue, then closed it. She was right. Of course she was right. He was falling apart, and his 12-year-old daughter could see it even if he couldn't admit it. That night, after Emma went to bed, Rob sat alone in his sealed fortress of a home and finally let himself acknowledge the truth. The cockroach was gone, but the damage remained. He'd been invaded in the most intimate way possible. His own body had become hostile territory. The temple his grandfather spoke of had been breached, and Rob no longer trusted it. Monday morning brought the follow-up appointment with Dr. Hayes. Rob sat in the examination room while she removed the bandage and examined his ear with the digital scope. "Healing well," she said, studying the monitor. "No signs of infection. The inflammation is decreasing." "When can I go back to work?" Rob asked. Dr. Hayes looked at him carefully. "Physically? Another week, maybe 2. But Mr. Mitchell," she paused, choosing her words, "how are you sleeping?" "Fine." "Rob." She used his first name deliberately. "I've been practicing for 10 years. I've removed insects from ears before. I know what comes after. The physical healing is one thing. The psychological impact is something else." Rob stared at his hands. "I can't sleep. Every sound makes me think something's crawling in. I know it's irrational. I know the odds of it happening again are minimal. But I can't stop. Feeling like I'm not safe in my own body." Dr. Hayes nodded. "That's a completely normal response. You experienced a violation. Your safe space, your own body, was invaded. That's traumatic." The word hung in the air. Traumatic. Rob had never thought of himself as someone who experienced trauma. Trauma was for soldiers, abuse survivors, people who'd been through real horror, not for middle-aged civil engineers who'd had a bug in their ear. But Dr. Hayes continued, "What you're experiencing has a name. It's a form of post-traumatic stress. Your brain is trying to protect you from another invasion by staying hyper-alert. But that hyper-alertness is exhausting and unsustainable." "So what do I do?" "I'd like to refer you to a colleague, Dr. Patricia Brennan. She specializes in trauma and anxiety disorders. I think talking to her could help." Rob's first instinct was to refuse. Therapy felt like an admission of weakness, like he couldn't handle his own problems. But then he thought of Emma's face, of her gentle insistence that he needed help, of the disappointment in her eyes when he'd said he was fine. "Okay," he said quietly. "I'll call her." Dr. Patricia Brennan's office was nothing like Rob expected. No clinical white walls or intimidating leather couches. Instead, Warm yellow walls, comfortable fabric chairs, and the gentle scent of lavender. Dr. Brennan herself was 60, with silver hair and a voice that reminded Rob of his grandmother, calm, unhurried, completely present. "Tell me what brought you here, Rob." Rob told the story again, the third time now. The itch, the denial, the olive oil, the 3 weeks, the extraction, the eggs. With each telling, it became slightly less surreal, slightly more integrated into his narrative of self. When he finished, Dr. Brennan was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "What you experienced was a violation. Your body, your safe space, was invaded. That's not a small thing." Those words, almost identical to Dr. Hayes's, broke something loose in Rob. "I feel so weak. I'm a grown man. It was just a bug. Just a bug that lived inside you for weeks. That laid eggs. That could have caused serious harm if you'd waited any longer." Dr. Brennan leaned forward slightly. "Rob, trauma isn't measured by how tough you are. It's measured by the impact of the experience. And this experience has clearly had a significant impact." "My dad would have said, 'Suck it up. Be a man.' Is that what you want Emma to learn? That asking for help is weakness?" The question landed like a physical blow. Rob thought about Emma's worried face, her gentle suggestions that he talk to someone, the way she'd become the caretaker in their relationship. "No," he said hoarsely. "No, I don't want her to learn that." "Then maybe it's time to teach her something different." That strength includes acknowledging when you need support. Over the following weeks, Rob began the slow work of recovery. Dr. Brennan introduced him to cognitive behavioral therapy, techniques to challenge the catastrophic thoughts that spiraled through his mind. When he heard a sound and immediately thought insect, she taught him to pause, examine the evidence, and redirect to more probable explanations. Exposure therapy started gently, looking at photos of insects, cartoonish at first, then gradually more realistic. Learning to sit with the discomfort without immediately fleeing. Understanding that anxiety peaks and then, if allowed to, naturally decreases. Progress was measured in small victories. The first night Rob slept 4 hours straight. The first meal he ate in the kitchen without checking for cockroaches every 30 seconds. The first morning he didn't inspect his ears with a flashlight before getting out of bed. But recovery wasn't linear. 2 weeks after starting therapy, Rob woke at 3 a.m. convinced something was in his ear. The sensation was so vivid, so real, that he rushed to the bathroom and frantically tried to look inside with his phone flashlight. Nothing. Of course nothing, but his heart raced for an hour afterward. Emma found him sitting on the bathroom floor, flashlight still in hand. "Dad?" Rob looked up at his daughter standing in the doorway in her pajamas, concern etched on her young face. He'd failed again. Failed to be the strong father she needed. Failed to— "I'm sorry," Emma said. Rob blinked. "Sorry? Honey, you didn't do anything." "For my nightmare. Last month. About something being in my ear. I think I made it worse for you." Rob remembered that night. Emma's fear. His own recognition that his trauma had spread to his daughter like a contagion, passed through love itself. He stood up and pulled her into a hug. "Em, you don't have anything to apologize for. If anything, I'm sorry. Sorry you had to see me struggling. Sorry I didn't get help sooner." "I'm glad you're getting help now," Emma said into his shoulder. "That's what's important." In that moment, Rob realized something profound. His daughter was teaching him what his father and grandfather never could. That vulnerability wasn't weakness. That asking for help was a form of courage. That being human meant sometimes being broken and having the strength to admit it. By October, Rob was ready to return to work. His first day back felt surreal, the construction site both familiar and foreign after 6 weeks away. The crew greeted him with careful enthusiasm, unsure what to say about his absence. Tommy pulled him aside. "Good to have you back, man. We missed you. Thanks for holding things together." "That's what friends do." Tommy hesitated, then asked, "You doing okay?" "Really?" Rob considered lying. Old habits died hard. But then he remembered Dr. Brennan's words, remembered Emma's face, remembered the cost of pretending everything was fine. "I'm doing better," he said honestly. "Still have bad days, but I'm working on it. Seeing a therapist." Tommy nodded, no judgment in his expression. "Good, that's good, Rob." The normalcy of work helped. Problems that needed solving. Blueprints to review. A crew that depended on his expertise. Purpose beyond his own trauma. But Rob noticed he was different now. More patient. More willing to ask for help when he needed it. More aware that the invincible image he'd projected had been a lie all along. In November, Dr. Hayes invited Rob to speak at a medical conference in Houston. His case, the extended infestation, the eggs, the near miss with hatching, had become a teaching moment. She asked if he'd be willing to share his experience with doctors and medical students. Rob's first instinct was to refuse. Who wanted to be known as the cockroach guy? But then he thought about the other people who might wait too long, who might dismiss symptoms, who might let pride or denial prevent them from seeking help. "I'll do it," he said. The conference room held 200 medical professionals. Rob stood at the podium, looking out at the sea of faces, and told his story one more time. But this telling was different. This time, he didn't just share what happened. He shared why. The cultural messages about masculinity and self-sufficiency, the fear of appearing weak, the gradual erosion of judgment that denial creates. "I almost died because I couldn't admit I needed help," Rob said. "Or worse, I almost suffered a fate that would have been devastating. Not because I wasn't smart enough or strong enough, but because I'd been taught that asking for help was weakness." After his presentation, 15 doctors approached him. They shared their own stories of patients who'd waited too long, who'd minimized symptoms, who'd suffered consequences that could have been prevented. They thanked him for speaking publicly about something most people would hide. But the moment that mattered most came from a young medical student, maybe 25, who shook Rob's hand and said, "My dad's been complaining about an ear problem for weeks. He keeps saying he'll handle it. I'm going to call him tonight and tell him your story." Rob drove back to Austin with a strange sense of peace. His nightmare had meaning now. His suffering could prevent someone else's. The worst experience of his life had become a story that might save others. 6 months after the extraction, Rob stood in Emma's bedroom doorway, watching her sleep. The nighttime ritual he'd developed, checking that she was safe, breathing, at peace. But tonight he wasn't checking out of fear. He was simply grateful. She'd taught him more than any therapist could. That love meant being honest about struggle. That strength included admitting weakness. That the best fathers weren't the ones who never fell apart, but the ones who showed their children how to put themselves back together. Rob still wore an earplug when he slept, still checked his surroundings more than most people, still had moments when a shadow moving triggered his heart rate. The trauma hadn't disappeared, trauma never truly does, but he'd learned to carry it differently. He'd learned to be human. Rob stood at his window one quiet evening, watching the sunset paint Austin's sky in shades of gold and amber. Emma was doing homework at the kitchen table, humming softly, a sound that once would have gone unnoticed, but now felt like music. 6 months ago, he'd almost lost everything because he couldn't admit he needed help, because he'd been taught that real strength meant suffering in silence, that asking for support was weakness. But his daughter had shown him a different truth. The strongest thing we can do is be honest about our struggles. Rob had learned that our bodies speak to us, and sometimes the bravest act is simply listening. He'd learned that vulnerability doesn't diminish us, it connects us. That sharing our darkest moments can light the way for others walking similar paths. Most importantly, he'd learned that healing isn't about returning to who we were before, but accepting who we've become after. As the last light faded and Emma called, "Dad, dinner's ready," Rob smiled. He was home. Not just in his house, but in himself, scars and all. Have you ever ignored a health warning because you thought you could handle it alone? What finally made you ask for help? Share your story in the comments. Your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today.